Hello everyone, Wayne Motts, the President Emeritus and Historian at the Gettysburg Foundation, coming to you on the Gettysburg Battlefield for a segment of Wall of Faces, Casualties at Gettysburg, and I've got a special guest, my friend, former President and CEO is Interim twice at the Gettysburg Foundation, David Malgee, and former board member. And David, thanks for coming out and being with us for this episode of Wall of Faces, Casualties at Gettysburg.
Thank you, Wayne. What a pleasure to be here tonight to just share some information on one of these soldiers who gave his life here at Gettysburg.
If anybody knows our series, or if you haven't been following us, you need to, but we do this Wall of Faces, Casualties at Gettysburg. There's a wall in the Museum of the American Civil War that has faces of Union and Confederate soldiers, and everyone on that wall was killed, wounded, or captured here in the 3 days of the Battle of Gettysburg. And we, in these episodes, have been profiling one Union and one Confederate soldier who were killed, wounded, or captured about the same place on the Gettysburg Battlefield. Today, we are at the position of the 111th New York, hence our special guest here with us to talk about that, near the Abraham Bryan barn and home owned by a free black man named Abraham Bryan. And today's episode will feature John Drake of the 111th New York and Colonel Samuel Lowe of the 28th North Carolina Infantry Regiment. Both these men casualties in Pickett's charge at this end, Pettigrew and Trimble's part of the attack, for July 3rd, 1863. Why don't we start out with Drake, because we're along the stone wall in position of the 111th New York. So David, how about John Drake? What can you tell us?
All right, Wayne. Well, first of all, we don't know a lot about John Drake. I will tell you what we know.
Okay, well that's good. Well, that's better. We're going to get educated already because we go ahead.
So Drake was here at Gettysburg, first lieutenant in Company F of the 111th New York, which was part of the 3rd Brigade, 3rd Division, 2nd Army Corps, the so-called Harper's Ferry Brigade. Some would even say the Harper's Ferry Cowards, and we all know that story. I think that they came here for redemption, and of course Lieutenant Drake was part of that, hoping that the reputation that they had gained, I would say, at Harper's Ferry, being one of those regiments that was surrendered there by Colonel Dixon Miles in September of 1862, hoping they can reverse that. So that's why how they feel, I think, and I think how Drake felt when he came to Gettysburg. He was one of 6 children, and he was the oldest of the 6. He was born in Weedsport, New York, which was a small port city, really village, on the Erie Canal.
Okay.
Just west of Syracuse in Cayuga County, New York. He enlisted when Lincoln issued his call for 300,000 troops in July of 1862, and he helped raise Company F. Therefore, he was mustered in as the 2nd lieutenant in Company F. He will be promoted to 1st lieutenant in mid-May of 1863, some 2 months, a little bit less than 2 months prior to the Battle of Gettysburg. What we do know about Drake is that he was mortally wounded here during the cannonade that preceded Pickett's charge. He took a shell fragment to the thigh, and he died later that day. He was evidently a very well-liked man, highly respected. And I have a couple of quotes. One by Colonel Clinton McDougal, who was the colonel of the 111th New York here at Gettysburg. Also, McDougal would briefly command the brigade after Eliakim Sherrill was wounded here during Pickett's charge as well. But this is what McDougal wrote in his official report in August of 1863. He said, "We lost a number of men during this shelling. Among them, Lieutenant John Drake of Company F, an officer loved and lamented by the whole regiment." And then I have a quote from the captain of Company F, a fellow named Benjamin Thompson, who would become fairly well known for his own narrative of the Battle of Gettysburg. And he was stunned by an artillery shell right along this wall where we're standing. So we're pretty close to where I think Drake must have been hit on July 3rd. But this is what Captain Benjamin Thompson wrote about Drake. He said that Drake was a perfect gentleman, a consistent Christian, and a most faithful officer. His loss to me was a personal bereavement. Now Drake will be buried here at Gettysburg, but his body will be exhumed. He'll be taken back to Weedsport, where today he lies in the Weedsport Rural Cemetery. He's got a beautiful obelisk monument, very ornate, with his name carved on it, killed in Gettysburg. And I've not been there, but I hope to someday. And that's just one story of the men who suffered and died here at Gettysburg.
So now you got to get that on your list of places that you want to go.
You do too.
And I love to walk in these cemeteries and look at these different stones. And you can't believe the stones you walk through and you see killed at Gettysburg on. You go to cemeteries all over and you have it. So now Drake, if I could now, I'll talk a little bit about our Confederate counterpart to John Drake. Drake is in the 111th New York. He's right here on the stone wall, and he's defending on July 3rd against Pickett's charge at this area, Pettigrew and Trimble. Isaac Trimble is in charge of William Dorsey Pender's division here, and one of the brigades under the command of James Lane has a regiment in it, the 28th North Carolina Infantry Regiment. And so for our Confederate counterpart to Drake today, I'd like to do Samuel Lowe, the colonel of the 28th North Carolina Infantry Regiment here on July 3rd, 1863. Now I'm going to move over here on the side. Maybe Sarah can pan over, and behind me is where the 28th North Carolina will be, coming up against the Emmitsburg Road, right behind where Pettigrew is located. Here's what we know about Lowe. He's from Lincoln County, North Carolina. He was 5 foot 10 inches tall, and he becomes a lieutenant first in Company G of the 28th North Carolina, then a captain in September 61, then major, then lieutenant colonel in 62, and colonel by November of 1862. On July 3rd, he is badly wounded in the left thigh, and then he's sent to the Richmond General Hospital. So he's not captured here. He's able to go out in the retreat. He's sent down to Richmond, where he is in the Richmond Hospital, and he is actually transferred to the Invalid Corps, not just because of this wound at Gettysburg, but in his service record he has that he had a very bad case of asthma, and one of the surgeons testifying that he is unfit for duty is none other than the surgeon of the 28th North Carolina, Robert Gibbon, the brother of Brigadier General John Gibbon, who is in charge of part of the Union defense just south of where we're standing here. So it's the interesting connections here. So unfortunately for Lowe, he's going to be invalided into the Invalid Corps, and then he'll be discharged out of the service. He's a merchant after the war in Iron Station, Lincoln County, North Carolina, and then he moves to Virginia, and he dies in the house of his son-in-law on May 30th, 1891, in Buena Vista, Virginia, and he's buried at Green Hill Cemetery there. So David, I just want to thank you for coming out. Our two Wall of Faces features today: John Drake of the 111th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment and Colonel Samuel Lowe of the 28th North Carolina, both of them wounded and one mortally here on July 3rd, 1863 in Pickett, Pettigrew, and Trimble's charge. We want to thank you for coming out and talking about Drake today. I love this series because we're doing one Union and one Confederate, puts a personal face on all these casualties, 51,000 casualties here on the Gettysburg Battlefield. We hope you'll go into the Visitor Center, see this wonderful display, the Wall of Faces, 280 Union, 280 Confederates. We're doing about one each a month. One Union and one Confederate, a pair of them. We'll be doing this series, I hope, for a long time, but it's a very interesting series because it really puts a face, I think, onto what you and I are talking about. This man mortally wounded at Gettysburg, Lowe invalided out of service, and David, it really puts a personal, it's one of my favorite exhibits.
It
really
does, and Wayne, let me make the point too, that we talk about 51,000 casualties, or whatever number the killed actually was, because we don't know how many died as a result of the battle. But whether somebody was killed or wounded or ended up missing, whatever it was, maybe they were in prison, these were all personal. Every one of these men went through a personal experience. Their family went through personal experiences. We must not lose, in the large numbers that were lost here, we must not lose sight of the fact that each death, each wound was very, very personal. And in some cases, those wounds affected these soldiers for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, you've got all the family members involved in this back home. They're trying to figure out the fate of whatever happened to their loved ones, and there's so many of them, both north and south. And it really ties both sides in, because it doesn't matter whether a soldier's wearing blue here or a soldier's wearing gray here. Their families, they've got anxious waiting at home to figure out what happened to these men that are here. We hope you enjoyed enjoyed this video segment of Wall of Faces, Casualties of Gettysburg. We hope you'll share. We hope you'll like these videos. Thank you for your support of the Gettysburg Foundation and for helping us help the Gettysburg National Military Park. Please follow, like, and subscribe to these social media channels for the foundation, and you can learn a lot more, and you can also help us in our quest to preserve and educate folks about what happened here for the 3 days of the Battle of Gettysburg. David, thanks again.
Thank you, Wayne.
And thanks to all of you.